Welcome, Bruce and Brucephines. My name's Albrecht von Stollen, and today I'm gonna be reviewing episode 7 of Taisho Otome Otogi Banashi. What awaits us this week? Before any further, let's go! I'll be redoing my latest Monarchist video and I'll re-upload it on Wednesday due to some problems. In other news, I have found the insert song from episode 4. The link to that song will be in the description below. Also, a certain man in a certain trial walks free. Truly a blessed week. She makes the simple poetry reading look wholesome. Finally, a poetry reading that isn't slam poetry. The title is quite fitting given the foreshadowing from last week's episode. It's finally autumn in Chiba. I'll be coming back to this later. Yuzuki is helping Tamahiko wash his face in the morning when the both of them end up blushing. Suddenly, three kids fall down the bush after peeping in on what Tamahiko and Yuzuki are doing. Wait, those are Ryo's brothers from the previous episode. They ask Tamahiko to teach them, and he says yes before what appears to be the other kids from the village show up. Tamahiko explains the whole thing to Yuzuki and the kids ask him to teach them. Tamahiko says that being a sensei is something for respectable adults and how he isn't respectable but he does it anyway. We are treated to a montage of Tamahiko teaching the village kids. Also, I see a cottery doll. The next day, more kids show up and some of the kids mention how they like being taught by Tamahiko. He blushes like the tsundere that he is and tells the kids that he's gonna be teaching them. Yuzuki is going all love-struck at Tamahiko when Ryo pops out of nowhere. Are they taught in the mystical art of popping up by shining Saotome from Utapri? Utapri references aside, Ryo brings some food to her brothers and Yuzuki defends Tamahiko. Ryo then brings Yuzuki to the kitchen. There, Yuzuki stomps on the udon dough in a sack with her feet as the dough is difficult to knead, while Ryo makes what appears to be maki. As the dough is in the sack, this is hygienic. Ryo introduces herself to Yuzuki and explains herself to Yuzuki before apologizing to her. Ryo has character development and I'll explain more on that later. Yuzuki and Ryo show up with lunch and they all eat it. Ryotaro praises his sister's futomaki and Yuzuki remarks that Ryo is a good older sister. The day ends and Ryo remarks on what it's like being bought. Ryotaro races his sister home and Yuzuki mentions how Tamahiko is a good teacher. Later, Tamahiko is writing something. I sense foreshadowing here. It's December and we get a montage of Tamahiko and Yuzuki cleaning up the house. Tamahiko falls asleep and Yuzuki places his head on her lap. Normally, when people see a lap pillow, they think that it's some weird fetish from anime. But the way this is handled is quite wholesome. Later, he wakes up and hears Yuzuki singing from outside. He goes there and sees Yuzuki not wearing anything warm, so he hugs her from behind. Tamahiko is truly a man among men. Yuzuki says that she had just turned 15 and that she's legally able to marry him. Apparently, her birthday is New Year's Eve, which is today in this scene, and Tamahiko is surprised. While Yuzuki is happy about this, Tamahiko is depressed. He mentions how he grew up in an indifferent household and he is unable to imagine what a happy home is even like. He also says that she's too good for him and how he's a burden compared to her. That being said, he also says that he wants to look towards joy instead. He even says that he wants to go back to school and how he's writing to his dad about it. So that's why he was writing earlier. He also says that he wants to study again and get a job. That's why he says that he can't marry her yet. Yuzuki is happy, mentioning how Tamahiko is kind to her and how he appreciates her. They then kiss! This is making me want to tap this sign. Meme aside, both of them are blushing heavily because of this and go to bed. A few weeks later, Tamahiko had finished another day teaching the village kids for the day and the kids go home. We see that Ryotaro had stayed behind and he happily tells Tamahiko that he is going to be an apprentice in a large store in Tokyo. With that, Ryotaro leaves. Something's wrong, I can feel it. Later, it's evening. Yuzuki pops into Tamahiko's room and he tells her that he doesn't know how to comfort Ryotaro as he's never had to work a day in his life to support a family. It's quite fitting as he's a dude from a rich family. Suddenly, there's some banging on the door. It's Ryo and she's looking for Ryotaro. The three of them look for Ryotaro and we see Ryo's origin. I'll get back to this later along with her character development as both are quite tied in. Yuzuki finds Ryotaro sleeping in the warehouse and tells Tamahiko about it. Ryotaro wakes up and Tamahiko tells him that Ryo's been looking for him. Ryotaro cries, telling them that he doesn't want to be an apprentice because he won't be able to see his family again. Tamahiko remembers what Ryotaro had said earlier in the episode and that gave him an idea. While Tamahiko never worked a day in his life, his family does have a lot of servants. He explains that when the servants work hard, the servants get days off and visit their families. One of his servants even went ahead and invited his entire family to visit Tokyo and see all the sights that Tokyo had to offer. That managed to cheer Ryotaro up. Ryo pops up and embraces Ryotaro. Ryotaro tells Ryo that he'll be alright. The next day, Ryotaro leaves for his apprenticeship in Tokyo with Tamahiko, Yuzuki, his siblings, and all the other village kids seeing him off with Yuzuki giving him caramels. Ryotaro promises Ryo and their brothers that he's gonna bring them all to Tokyo one day, and so Ryotaro leaves. Ryo mentions that Ryotaro sees Tamahiko as a dad figure in his life. Tamahiko remarks that he wants to get better at what he's doing and the episode ends. This episode follows chapters 13, 14, and even a part of 22 from the manga. I'm mentioning it here now because this is gonna help with what's coming next. First, the usage of poetry in the beginning is a rather nice touch as it shows how traditional the setting is. It's the 1920s after all. Next is the whole thing about autumn earlier. In the manga, the scene where Yuzuki is helping Tamahiko wash his face takes place on March 1st, 1923. But in this episode, it happens in the autumn of 1922. This is more of the anime taking creative license from the source material. That being said, Tamahiko helping out the kids from the village before 1923 is not really a problem, as this sets him up as being more reliable and that helps give more weight at how he wanted to improve from earlier. Now I'm gonna go after Ryo again. Before I continue, I need to say this. Explanations do not automatically mean excuses. I need to say this because I've seen people use backstories and origin stories to excuse bad behavior from fictional characters. Ryo's behavior in the previous episode is still wrong. That being said, I want to explore the way that she had acted in the previous episode using this one. In one scene, she mentions how Yuzuki was bought with money. This does not mean that slavery is a thing in Japan at that time, but simply selling someone off to pay debt, usually under arranged marriages, and prostitution. This is because Ryo herself was sold off by her father for money when she was 16. She was about to get R-worded by an older guy who had bought her when her brother Ryotaro saved her from it. After this, the deal was broken off and Ryo along with Ryotaro are implied to have returned that older guy's money to him. This is why she values Ryotaro dearly. This also explains why she was a douchebag to Yuzuki in the previous episode. Because she thought that what had happened to her had also happened to Yuzuki. As I said last time, Ryo is a foil to Yuzuki, not competition. Seeing the two get along might feel like a rushed redemption, but I have a feeling that this will be fleshed out in future episodes. Tamahiko improving himself despite his pessimism and his disability is quite a good sight to watch because it relates to how men feel in life as of late. I am of the opinion that Tamahiko is a good example to men because of this. Him being a Chad towards Yuzuki shows us what a healthy relationship looks like. No manipulation, lies, nor abuse like what we're peddled to, especially online nowadays. I recommend this episode not only as a follow-up to the previous one, but also as a guide to what a healthy relationship is like. Come join me next week as I'll review episode 8. Please like, share, and subscribe to this video.